welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 202, and today's date is October 30th, 2013. And the title of this episode is DHS is conducting drills to deal with domestic terrorists, and that means you. And what we are seeing is that DHS has set up many different drills and that just deal with extremist, radical people here in the United States, and we will go over that towards the end of this report. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to all those that have donated to the site. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And for those people who don't know and who are new to the X22 Report, you can come to the site and listen to the broadcast before it hits YouTube. And if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see a little circle with an arrow. It's just the audio. You hit play. There's no video or anything like that. You can listen to it right on the site. I also have other tabs that I update all day long. We have the Sentinel alerts, and I usually comment on those. And we have a dynamic timeline of the collapse, and that is continually changing, and that is under the economic collapse tab right there. And I also track some products for inflation, deflation. And we also have the people. This is a forum of like-minded people who talk about the economic collapse and many other different things. It is completely free, and if you'd like to join, you can make up some code name, which most of us have, and just go in there, sign up. Doesn't call you, don't take any credit card, nothing like that. It's completely free. Just want to get a group of people together that represent the world and hear what they have to say in different parts of the world. So if you are from Canada, if you are from Australia, if you are from England, if you are from Spain, France, Iran, Syria, China, Russia, join up. Let us know what's happening. And this way we can see from real people what is actually going on around the world instead of listening to the corporate media and them telling us what is going on. And it's a great way to get people together and to talk about what is going on. Now, this tomorrow, which is October 31st, I will be putting up an interview I did with Fabian, and I will put that on the x22report.com site around lunchtime. I'm still doing my normal everyday report later in the day, but I will post this interview up around lunch time, and it's going to be around that time period. So, and I will set out, those people who signed up for an alert, I will send it out, and you'll get the email saying that it is up there. I will post it also on YouTube. That will be posted a little while later because I have to compile it, then upload it, and have it processed, and it just takes a little bit longer to do that. So just check it out. And I'll remind everyone at the end of the report about the interview with Fabian. Let's get into the economic collapse news. What we are seeing is that the CPI drops, and it is missing by most in 14 months. And it has dropped around 1.7%, and it is one of the biggest misses in 14 months. And apparel has fallen by 0.5%, and this is the biggest drop in 6 months. I guess people are just keeping the clothing they have. They're not going out buying more or new, and this has to go back to people who are unemployed, underemployed, who do not have disposable income, or just keeping what they have. They're making do, and we are definitely seeing this. And ADP has come in with a huge payroll miss, and this is the lowest since April. And again, we are seeing that small firms showed the smallest job gain in 10 months, medium-sized firms, smallest gain in 14 months. Now, could this be something that has to do with Obamacare? We saw a lot of companies coming out, and I reported on this, that they are reducing the amount of hours, making people from full-time to part-time, and they weren't hiring full-time positions because they do not want to provide health insurance, and they do not want to get penalized. So what they're trying to do is stay under the radar and keep everything within the guidelines so they don't have to worry about that. I know I talked a lot, and I continually talk a lot about real estate. And what is happening right now, we understand that most of the purchases now are by cash. I think it was 60%, and those are from investment companies, hedge funds. We are also seeing mortgage applications plunge, and we're seeing that people are not purchasing homes at this time. We see that new home builders are saying that their foot traffic is declining, and we are now seeing and we are now beating the bubble of 2007. If we look, and I have this graph on the x22report.com site, you can come take a look at it. It is the Wilshire U.S. Real Estate Investment Trust Total Market Index, and at the height of the market in 2007, they blew the bubble up to around 7,000. I'm sorry, about 6,900 or so. Now, in 2013, the Fed, the U.S. government, has blown the housing bubble back up which passed the 6,900 index, all the way up to 7,500. So let's review this for a second here. We hit a height of 6,900 back in 2007, and it dropped when everything fell apart. It dropped down to an index of around 1,700. So we went from 6,900 index all the way down to a 1,700. And from 1,700 to now, they've pumped it back up and passed the 6,900 mark, and we are now at 7,500. So when this housing market collapses, it is going to come down very, very hard, because we just have to think for a second. If the real estate market crashed and it came down the way it did, and the amount of foreclosures and the amount of short sales and the amount of people that lost their jobs, the amount of people that have bad credit, the amount of people who've lost their wealth, how possibly can the housing market move back up and pass the time period of when people were employed, people were making a living, and unemployment was at a very low rate? It doesn't make any sense, because we have to look at the numbers. They're telling us that unemployment has come down, and we are now like at 7.2%. So that should say that more people are employed, more people are making income, which means more people have disposable income, which means more people are going to spend on retail, which means more people are going to spend purchasing automobiles, which means people are going to purchase homes. But what do we actually see? We see retail sales declining. We see stores closing. We see car sales plummeting. We're seeing housing sales from everyday American people declining. So the unemployment numbers, compared to what is actually going on in the economy, do not make sense. And the only reason that we're seeing this is because the Fed and the government are manipulating all these numbers. And this is what we are seeing at this time. And again, the U.S. government and the Fed were building up the case that the economy was getting better, and they were going to taper in September. But they did not have that event which they thought they were going to have with Syria, which they started on August 21st. And they thought they were going to use that and say we're about to taper, but either the Syrian Electronic Army or Iran or some type of other event would have occurred, and they would have brought down and they would have blamed the country on the declining economic conditions. Now, since they couldn't get that event started, they're sitting here figuring out a new plan. And they're not going to taper or even mention taper right now. What they're going to do is they are going to let everyone know that they can't taper right now because the market is not strong enough. And this is what they are saying. It's not strong enough, and we'll look at it in December or the beginning of 2014. And the reason why they're saying this is because they are planning another event. You have to remember, the Fed completely controls the market. They manipulate unemployment, so they control those numbers. They manipulate GDP, and they recently had to manipulate the numbers again, and they went all the way back to 1929 and recalculate them all the way up until the present time so they can get a positive GDP. They manipulate inflation because they took out food, they took out fuel and energy. But when you go to the market, and I track this stuff, you can see that most of the food has increased in price. And if we go back to 2008, you can definitely see that food has definitely increased. When President Obama took office, gasoline was not at, what is it, $3.40 now? I mean, it's different in all different places, but it wasn't this high. So energy costs, food costs have definitely risen. And guess what? That is inflation. So we are definitely seeing inflation. And they are going to put this off because they understand that they are trying to get an event. They are planning on it right now, and they will use this to bring us into war. And this will be used to blame on another country of why the economy is declining and collapsing at this time. But we all know for a fact that the economy is not doing well at all right now. And we are seeing many different signs of this. And here is another one. The banks right now wrote a bill, and it is all in their favor. And this is called the Swaps Regulatory Improvement Act. And the titles of these bills are absolutely meaningless. They don't reflect anything of what the bill actually says. It's almost like the Affordable Care Act, which is not affordable at all, and there is no care. But this is the Swaps Regulatory Improvement Act. And this was approved by the House Financial Services Committee in May and is headed for a vote on the House floor soon. What it's going to do, it's going to gut a section of the Dodd-Frank Financial Reform Act called the push-out rule. Banks do not like the push-out rule. And this is scheduled to go into effect on July 13. Because this provision will forbid them from trading certain derivatives. And I know a lot of people have talked about the derivative market where this is a house of cards and it will collapse and it will completely decimate the financial market. So what they are doing right now, and the banks wrote this bill and the House approved it and it's moving to the Senate. And again, our congressmen have nothing to do with this. They didn't write it. They read it and said, okay, here we go. And the derivatives, these are complicated financial instruments with values derived from underlying variables such as crop prices or interest rates. And under this rules, banks will have to move these risky trades into separate non-bank affiliates that aren't insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and are less likely to receive, guess what, government bailouts from the FDIC. Now, guess what the bill is going to do? Because we have to think about this for a second. Right now, we understand that the derivative market is a house of cards. One small glitch, the whole thing starts unraveling because it's piled on top of each other, and it's not insured by the government. So this bill, what it's going to do, it will permit the banks and it will allow them to move them into government-insured deposits to bet on a wider range of these risky derivatives. So they're going to move them from these non-insured accounts and move them into government-insured deposit accounts. And this is what they're trying to do. And right now, under the existing law, what they can't do is they can't these things are not insured, and what is not allowed is commodity and agricultural swaps, equity swaps, energy swaps, metal swaps, agricultural swaps, and certain credit default swaps. Now, when Citibank and the other banksters try to get this bill through, what is allowed? Everything. All those things that are not allowed that I just read move into the column is to what is allowed. So it completely benefits them. It protects them because guess what? They know what is coming. They understand the economy is on the verge of collapsing. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the government again to protect them from this, just like the subprime. But what they're doing this time is they're looking ahead saying, what we need to do is we need to get this stuff backed up by the government, by the FDIC. So let's start moving this, let's create this bill so we can move everything over, because they didn't do it during the subprime incident. And guess what? They had to go to Congress and get a bailout. But under the Dodd-Frank Act, they can't do that anymore. So here we are. They understand that a collapse is coming, and this is the action that they are taking at this time. Now, why would our Senate, our Congress, our House allow them to do this? Well, let's take a look here. Who has Citigroup and other banking institutions given money to? Well, Jim Himes, a Democrat of Connecticut, has received $66,000 from them. John Bonner has received $917,000 from them. Randy Holtgren has received $136,000 from them. So you can see, and there's many, many others. You can see that these people are being funded for their campaigns and for other things by banks to get these laws into place. And it's only to benefit them because they understand what is about to happen. And we can see that we are on the verge of collapse because they wouldn't do all of this if everything was okay. They wouldn't care. But they understand what is coming. They understand that without QE pumping this money into the banks would collapse all at once at this time. And this is why QE has not stopped. Now, moving on here. Now, I've talked about this, that the government will do everything and anything to get the weapons away from the American people. This is why the UN Arms Treaty is pending in the Senate. John Kerry has signed it. President Obama has already written executive orders, and he already said he will approve it. He's also written the executive orders for the Dianne Feinstein bill, which is still pending in the Senate. They are waiting for a special event to come along, which will be so devastating that Congress, the American people, will demand that these bills be passed. So in the meantime, they are using a backdoor approach to implement gun control. So what are they doing right now? Well, the EPA just shut down the last lead smelting plant in the U.S. They raised the EPA regulations by tenfold, and it would have cost the plant $100 million to comply. See how easy it is? All you have to do is change the regulations, tack on a fee, tell them that they have to do this, and make it so outrageous that they can't afford to do this. And if they don't do it, they're fined, or they have to close. And this is what they've done already. Now, all the domestic mine lead ore will have to be shipped overseas, refined, then shipped back to the U.S., and this will make it harder for everyone to get ammo. And the demand of this will make the prices of ammo skyrocket, which will make it very expensive for people to get their hands on ammo. And this will also be an excellent chance for Obama to rig the market to where all ammo has to be purchased from the government using some type of ammo registration. And we can see they are using different tactics to get or reduce the amount of people that have weapons. You might have the weapon, but without ammo, they are worthless because they understand when the collapse comes, they cannot have a population with weapons. They also understand going forward that they want to control the people. They do not want a people that can think on their own, that have weapons or have rights. And this is why you see the NDAA, the Patriot Act, all this spying, trying to get rid of the Second Amendment, Common Core in the schools to train the next generation of children to conform to the new world order. This is their entire plan because they understand the system right now is collapsing. There's no way out of it. They can't stop it. And they understand eventually they will need to restart this. And when they restart this after the Great War, they want it their way. They want the people trained in their way, and they want to get rid of that pesky Constitution because that Constitution is a very big problem, and it is a huge wall that they can't get past, and this is why they need it gone. And this is why a lot of the government officials and a lot of Harvard professors were out there saying maybe it's time that we get rid of the Constitution. It's a little old-fashioned, and this is why you are hearing all of these things. And, right now we are seeing Obamacare, and this whole thing is completely set up to make the insurance companies wealthy, to bring in more dollars to them, to create revenue for the government, because they are saying that those people who are opting out, with all of these people that are opting out, that if you don't want it, will bring in around $200 billion revenue into the government, because they need this revenue because the debt right now in the U.S. is so high and the revenue coming in is completely declining. They need new ways to get new revenue in there, and this is why they have FACTA, where they're allowed to go outside of the United States and have people report on other people. And if you are making money someplace else, they're allowed to tax you. If you have a dual citizenship, they are also allowed to tax you, and that's why a lot of people are giving up their American passport and saying we are no longer citizens of the U.S. But they're also trying to implement another tax for those people who are giving up their citizenship. They're looking to impose a 30% tax on your wealth. So when you leave the country, you still have to pay them. Because right now, during the end game, there are a list that I created that we are definitely going to see happening here. And what we're seeing right now are a lot of it. Let me read you some of them here. And I made this up when I first started the site. What we're seeing is they are quickly creating laws to remove rights. Well, we're seeing that now. They are implementing more taxes. Well, we are seeing that. We are seeing troops on the ground. We are seeing more military exercises within our borders. They've created the bail-ins already in the country, but we haven't seen the actual bail-in, but soon we will. We are seeing false flags to pass gun control laws, CISPA law, martial law, and eventually we will see war when it gets started. So we are seeing many of these things come about, and in regards to Obamacare, this is just another cash grab for them. And again, since they understand that the economy is collapsing, here are 10 signs that Obamacare is going to further wreck the U.S. economy. Right now, number one, it is being projected that millions upon millions of Americans are going to lose their current health insurance plans thanks to Obamacare. Two, the health insurance premium increases for many families are experiencing are absolutely mind-boggling. Some are seeing 539% increase in their affordable care that the president promised. Number three, Obamacare actually includes incentives for people to work less and make less money. Number four, thankfully, the mandate where Obamacare was delayed for a little while. Um, this is for the employer mandate, but again, ultimately, it will be back, and you'll see widespread job losses all over the country because of the employer mandate. And again, that was put off, I think, until 2015. Number five, even if you are able to keep your job, there is no guarantee that your employer will continue to offer health insurance as an employee benefit. And we're seeing many companies doing this right now to the spouses, where they're saying, guess what, you can go to the exchanges. We will only cover the employee at this time. Number six, according to CBS News, so far the number of people that have had their health insurance policies canceled is more than 3 times greater than the number of people that have signed up for the new policies under Obamacare. Number seven, if what is going on in New York is any indication, those that are signing up for health insurance under Obamacare are going to have a really, really hard time finding a doctor. Because what is happening in New York? Well, 44% of the MDs said they are not participating in the nation's new health care plan. Number eight, Obamacare is turning out to be a goldmine for hackers and identity thieves. The personal information of millions of Americans could potentially end up being compromised, and the site is not secure, and the information they're collecting is not secure either. Number nine, 60% of all personal bankruptcies in the United States are related to medical bills because millions of Americans are now losing their health insurance policies, and millions of others will choose to pay the fine rather than sign up for Obamacare. Number 10, in the end, the burden for paying for the subsidies that Obamacare offers is going to overwhelmingly fall on the taxpayers like it always does. This is going to cause our nightmarish national debt to get even worse. And again, I said this from the beginning, Obamacare is not for the people. If it was for the people, there is no reason for penalties. If it was for the people, you would not have to increase the premiums so high and the deductibles so high. It just, you wouldn't have to do that if it was truly, truly for the people. Now, we understand now that the NSA is spying on everyone across the globe, even the Vatican. And what's strange about them eavesdropping on the Vatican is one of the reasons for the illegal wiretaps was to be abreast of threats to the financial system. So, what are they trying to say, and what is the reason for that? Okay. Now, in a little town in Arkansas called Little Rock, there was a live fire sniper training drill. They did not notify the people, and we're seeing this happen all over America. They continually have these drills with no warnings. We've seen it in Houston. We've seen it in Miami with helicopters with live fire weapons being dispersed. We saw it in L.A. and other places. And right now, the people were woken up around, some people were up, some people were still sleeping, but it was around 11 a.m., and they heard rifle fire, they heard explosions, and this is just another way of conditioning everyone that for what is coming, to expect military forces on the ground, to expect gunfire and explosions and helicopters flying above with machine guns firing in the middle of a city. They are conditioning everyone to get used to this. Now, what are we seeing around the world here in point to the war that is coming? Well, we understand the U.S. and other nations are encircling China. We understand that Russia is supplying Armenia with missiles and setting up and updating their bases there. We understand that Russia is deploying more of their fleet to the Mediterranean. And we understand that Russia is trying to move into Egypt to take over the port there. And we are seeing China do the same thing. And right now, Russia plans to bring more S-300 air systems to the EU border of Belarus. And right now, Moscow is supplying them, and the reason why they're doing this is to strengthen the external border under a project of merging the country's air defenses. The systems are to be deployed close to Belarus border with NATO's Poland and Lithuania right on the border. So you can see what is happening right now. Each country is positioning their military assets because they all understand what is going to eventually happen. They understand the U.S. dollar, the empire of the United States, the central bankers, are completely losing control in the Middle East at this time. They are continually drone striking the people that are rising up. They are losing control in Egypt. They are losing control in Saudi Arabia. These Middle Eastern countries are starting to understand what is happening, and they are starting to move away from the U.S. dollar and make deals with other nations because they understand they don't want to be holding on to this dollar when it collapses and implodes. Now, Beijing at this point is beefing up their strategic triangle with Russia and India to counter U.S. containment policy. And what they're doing is the three members of the BRIC group has thrown into Beijing's latest strategy to counter what it perceives as an anti-China containment policy spearheaded by Washington. And what they're doing is they're getting together and they are laying out a plan to position their military assets, because what they see is Washington right now, the central bankers are encircling, and all the Western nations are encircling China because they understand what is going on. China is picking up on this, and they are preparing. Russia understands, they are preparing. And we all see this happening at this time. We also understand that Israel is continuing with their propaganda because they really want to get the war started. They want to get into Iran, they want to get into Syria, and they are doing everything they can. And the Israel lobby, which is very strong, is trying to sabotage the Iran-U.S. nuclear talks, and they are trying everything they possibly can. And Petraeus is out there, and he says Obama realizes that passing and implementing these resolutions would sabotage the negotiations and the peace process. But Petraeus said there is no other lobby that is powerful as AIPAC right now, and they are paying a lot of money to a lot of the senators and representatives to push the sanctions, to push war with Iran, and we can see this completely happening. And how are we seeing this happening? Well, a lot of the senators right now are preparing new Iran sanctions. They are pushing for new sanctions in the Middle East, and Senator Robert Mendez announced his latest plan to members of AIPAC, which is the Israel lobby, saying that the goal of his new sanctions would be to cut Iran's oil exports in half within the next year. And we can see what is happening here. They're trying to squeeze Iran. They're trying to get something going. Israel continually says that Iran is 2 weeks away from some type of nuclear weapon. They are paving the road and leading everyone down this path because they understand they need to get this war started. They need to get into Iran. They need to get into Syria to prop up the U.S. dollar, because right now it is going to collapse. So what is Obama doing right now and the Democrats? And we have to put this into context. The next debt ceiling argument or discussion, whatever you want to call it, is in February. Right now, there is no debt ceiling. It is waived. So Obama has free reins. He has a credit card with no limit. So they are spending like crazy. The the debt is rising extremely fast at this time. So Democrats in Congress are seeking to delay a new round of Iran sanctions by up to 4 months as they assess the impact of U.S. policy towards Tehran, according to a draft legislation that is circulating now in Capitol Hill. Now, 4 months, that brings us to February. And I've said this before. This is laying out an event that is going to occur within this time period. In the beginning, I said it was going to be in the late fall, early winter, and it has been pushed back a little bit because they really thought that this event in Syria was going to happen and they were going to create this collapse during this time period. But since that event didn't happen, they had to reorganize and come up with another plan, and it seems like they have already come up with this plan. So what are they doing right now? They are building up for the next event, and it will happen within this time period, because they understand that the economy is imploding on itself and there is no way out. And right now, the chemical watchdog that is overseeing the chemical weapons, they've missed the deadline of October 27th, and they are saying that they will try to meet the November 1st deadline to destroy the Syrian chemical weapons. And like I said in my other report, the rebels and the fierce fighting are keeping them from two sites at this time. And if we notice, the rebels will not come to the peace talks, because what the U.S. government is trying to do right now is they're trying to strengthen their hand over Assad right now. Right now, the paid mercenary rebels, whatever you want to call them, are losing ground. So they will not come to the peace talks because they don't have the upper hand. What the U.S. is determined to do is to get the upper hand and to get the paid mercenaries rebels into a better position. And only at this time will they come to the peace talks. So at this point, they are not going to go to the peace talks at this time unless something dramatically changes. Now, we've seen another glitch in NASDAQ, and it's just amazing in this short period of time. I mean, there's been no glitches for who knows how long. No one has ever reported it, but within the last, 4 months, there have been so many glitches in NASDAQ that completely leads me to believe that they are modifying, preparing, and getting ready for what is coming, and there will be a cyber attack which will be coupled with other events that will take place in the next couple of months right now. Okay, now we understand that there is a power grid drill coming up November 13th and 14th, and this is going to include thousands of utility workers, business executives, National Guard officers, FBI, anti-terrorism experts, and officials from government agencies in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, which are preparing for an emergency drill in November that will simulate a physical attack and cyber attack that could take down large sections of the power grid. And we understand that this is coming. It doesn't mean that something will happen on this date, but at what we've seen in the past, usually with a drill this big, with this many people, we can assume something might happen. Now, Europe is mulling over having sanctions against the U.S. because of spying. And this would be one of the first times that the U.S. would have sanctions applied to it. And because Europe and all the other nations are not too keen on the idea that the U.S. government has been spying and listening and recording everything that they say. And this is the act of a desperate government in the end game, where they end up spying on everyone because they understand the collapse is coming and they need to know what all these nations are doing at this time. Okay, now as the title says in this report, DHS is conducting drills to deal with domestic terrorists. And we can see from all of these drills that something is definitely up, because these 20 drills right here have nothing to do with foreign terrorists. It has everything to do with the American people. And here are some of them. College campus hostage rescue. Tactical teams will be evaluated on their ability to transition between many different tactics based on rapidly evolving dynamic scenarios in colleges. SWAT and K-9 integration during deployment. Tactical teams will coordinate with K-9 units to search a rural wooded area for suspected domestic terrorists who recently murdered one CHP officer and wounded another. High school campus assault. Tactical teams will probably respond to a terrorist attack at a school, testing their ability to operate under fire. Anarchist refinery bomber. Teams are presented with a scenario testing their ability to operate in a large open area and minimize damage to critical infrastructure caused by domestic terrorists. Domestic terrorist watershed takeover. Tactical teams will be evaluated on their ability to respond to a chemical attack while mitigating further domestic terrorist activity and rescuing hostages. High-risk search warrant. Tactical teams will be presented with a scenario to work in conjunction with Drug Enforcement Agency to successfully execute by-bus search warrants. Community Justice Center takeover. Teams are provided a scenario testing their ability to work in confined areas under duress while dealing with domestic terrorists. Extremist manhunt. Tactical teams will respond to violent domestic terrorists who have gunned down an undercover agent and taken hostages. Trans-American Pyramid Center takeover. This scenario was developed to test tactical teams' response to a homegrown terrorist attack on San Francisco high-rise buildings. Domestic terrorist school takeover. Tactical teams will provide an active shooter scenario testing their ability to effectively engage the domestic terrorists and effect a rescue of the hostages. Explosive ordnance disposal response. Two teams work together to enter a booby-trapped apartment, render a safe number of booby traps, and analyze chemical presence for their use. And we can see this just goes on and on and on. Environmental terrorist sabotage. Task force teams will be confronted with multiple and conflicting priorities while freeing two trapped construction workers by domestic terrorists. And I mean, this continually goes on and on and on and on and on about domestic terrorists in this country. Now, if I remember correctly, when they were creating DHS, wasn't this to make sure we were safe from foreign terrorists? But again, if you go to the DHS website, they have a domestic alert system. Do you know, and I've said this before, it never says anything. It's not even operational because DHS, like Obama says, is a civilian army. It is to control the population of Americans during the economic collapse. This is why DHS has been put into place. And we can see from all of their training and from everything that you see, because think about it, the terrorists that we see fly in planes, blow them up, plant bombs, blow them up. They don't walk on the streets with guns. They don't go into schools holding children hostage. This is not what the terrorists do. The terrorists that they're talking about and the terrorists that they're going to be going after is you, and you. Those people who rise up against the government, who talk out against the government. This is what DHS is set up to do. This is why they have been hiring people to protect the government buildings for this Friday when EBT, and going forward when EBT is reduced, because they are very worried about rioting people. And it looks like they are promoting rioting because the best thing and the one thing the government would really like to do is to implement martial law, to have DHS with local law enforcement in the field controlling and locking down the people and suspending the Constitution. Listen, everyone, again, tomorrow around lunchtime, I will be putting up the interview with Fabian. It will be on the x22report.com site. If you sign up for the alerts, I will email you with the information. And if you're not on the alerts, you can just come to the site, scroll down on the home page. You will see it right there. Just click the circle with the arrow. If you're on a different browser, it might look a little different, but just hit it and you can start listening to the audio. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.